The first ever World Humanitarian Summit has come to an end in Istanbul, Turkey. The Directorate of Information and Communication of the African Union caught up with Her Excellency Aisha Abdullahi, who highlighted some of the outcomes as well as the participation of the African Union Commission during the summit.
My name is Aisha Abdullahi. I'm the Commissioner for Political Affairs at the African Union Commission, headquarters Ethiopia. Part of my work is ensuring humanitarian assistance to people that are displaced on the continent, be they refugees, IDPs and returnees. And we are coming to Istanbul. It's a very important summit to us, to the African continent, in order to ensure that the humanitarian crisis on the continent are addressed and the response is done effectively. We came out from the Commission, from the organs, and also many of our member states, including some of our heads of state and government, participated effectively in this summit and are still around to make their contributions for various reasons. 75% of humanitarian interventions are on the African continent. Many people are displaced. Currently, the figures that we have is about 16 million people displaced, 13 million IDPs, 3 million refugees. However, we feel that in the current situation that we are witnessing in the world, attention is being shifted away from the crisis on the African continent. When you consider what's happening in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, the international community seems to be focusing more of its attention to these conflicts, whereas on the African continent we have many protracted displacements, ongoing conflicts like the case of Somalia. Luckily we are trying to contain South Sudan currently, but we have also protracted displacement like the case of Western Sahara, who have been out in the Tundif camps in Algeria for 40 years now. So these are the issues that we are coming with. We also have our member states like Kenya, who have been hosting refugees from Somalia for 24 years, now 25 years actually, in the Dadaab camps. It has become a rich, with the terrorist attacks in Kenya, the member state is really raising concerns about hosting the refugees. So these are the issues that we are coming with to the Humanitarian Summit. First, let me begin by saying that the session was well attended. Many distinguished people participated, including the Chief Humanitarian Coordinator, Mr. Stephen O'Brien, the former UNHCR Chief, Mr. Guterres, many distinguished people from the African continent, many ministers, including some vice presidents. And the whole thing, the theme of the side event is about ensuring effectiveness on the humanitarian interventions on the continent. And we are the only region in the world that came to Istanbul with a common African position. This was commended by everybody, including the Secretary General himself, and all the people that spoke commended the African Union for taking this summit seriously. We see Istanbul as the beginning, and we have come in our common African position with very, very strong proposals. One is the setting up of an African humanitarian agency. We have not decided on where it should be, but we believe that this agency is very important for coordinating all the humanitarian efforts on the continent. Two, we are also asking for a review of the humanitarian architecture, and we believe that our own African humanitarian architecture, of course African solutions to African problems, but we are not an island. We'd want to ensure that we synergize, we coordinate with all regional organizations, with all partners, with all humanitarians to ensure the effectiveness of the humanitarian action on the continent. During the panel, we had distinguished speakers who spoke to various issues. You may recall that the African Union has a very unique convention, the Kampala Convention, is the only instrument in the world that addresses the issues of internal displacement. We also discuss the root causes of displacement. We believe that for us to solve the problems on the continent, issues to do with governance, issues to do with development, issues to do with addressing human rights violations, and coincidentally, this year is the year of human rights with special focus on women. So there's also a human rights phase to the humanitarian crisis that we also highlighted. So this was what we featured on the interventions this morning. Well, this document, we were tasked by the summit about 2 years ago that when we are coming to Istanbul, we should come with a common African position. It is an outcome of consultations. We did consultations in all the 5 geographical regions of the continent. We capped it with a continental meeting, and then it was adopted by the African Union Summit in January this year. And it's a very comprehensive document, and even the United Nations, they said this to us, that they actually tagged onto the African position in the Secretary General's report, that it provided like a template for them, for the SG to make his report. So it's a document that is important for the African continent, but also in this context, important for the rest of the world, because it's really leading the conversation. And for us, we see this summit is in Istanbul as the beginning, as a wake-up call, a call to a paradigm shift in the way that we address humanitarian crisis, not only in Africa, but in the entire world. That really is not about feeding people, giving them food rations, but ensuring that we address their rights, we treat them as normal people. We also integrate them. Issues of development and humanitarian response, a bridge should be built across the two. And for us on the continent, we have our vision, Agenda 2063, and we resolved in 2013, when we had our jubilee, to silence the guns by 2020. So we also see this opportunity in Istanbul and also the post-Istanbul to address these issues in order to ensure a peaceful, prosperous continent for us to achieve our Agenda 2063. First, we have drawn a lot of attention to the African situation. It's our primary gain, because we believe before coming here that attention is being shifted away from the crisis on the African continent. 2, we are coming here announcing a new humanitarian architecture for the continent, but we know that, as I told you earlier, we cannot implement this architecture in isolation. We need to also discuss with the rest of the world, other regional organizations, in order to ensure that this architecture is a success. We are also setting up the African Humanitarian Agency, which we hope will address the displacements on the continent so that our people can live peacefully and also in prosperity. We are also in Istanbul to network with other actors. We have this exhibition stand where we are exhibiting not only our common African position, but other initiatives that, like the West Africa Preparedness Initiative, our Agenda 2063, and the Africa Risk Capacity. We are also featuring our innovation. We have the Ushahidi, a software that has been used. It was developed in Kenya, but it has now become like an international software. There are many young people. Africa is a very young continent that are doing a lot of innovations that we believe that we should showcase to the rest of the world. So we have our innovation stand where we are showcasing innovation. So what we are saying in this summit is that Africa is rising. Africa has come of age, and we need genuine, respectful, and transparent partnership with the rest of the world. Call on Africans. We say African solutions to African problems. We mustn't make it just a mere rhetoric. We are also saying to the Africans that we really appreciate that they are hosting many refugees. I've been to Uganda and other places like Chad that are hosting refugees from neighboring countries, and they are doing it quietly and respectfully. If these contributions from fellow Africans were to be quantified, it's really enormous, but we are not making a noise about it. But we are saying to the rest of the world, yes, we still have these problems which we must address globally. We are currently losing a lot of people in the Mediterranean Sea trying to cross to Europe. This is something that we need to address not only as Africans, but as the rest of the world. So we are here in this conference to address humanitarian crisis and to ensure that there's a paradigm shift, that it becomes more effective.